Hi there, my name's Elizabeth and I like to sew smart. Today, for a handy hint, I'm going to show you how to put a hanging sleeve on a quilt that you've already completed. This is a little quilt that I've made, and it was made originally just for a mat for a little table for Christmas, but when I'd finished it I thought, oh, I wouldn't mind that as a wall hanging, just a small one for Christmas in a small space. So I'll show you how we can actually make that now into a hanging. I have cut a piece of fabric, matching fabric, the binding fabric, 5 inches deep. Now mine is that length because this is the size of my quilt. You need it roughly about 3/4 of an inch in from each end, so you would have to measure your quilt. So it's 5 inches by that distance there, about 3/4 of an inch in from the end of your quilt. And what I'm going to do, turning it inside out, right sides together, I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch down either end, joining those two together, either end, and then I'm turning it right side out, so it will look like that, except it will have a seam tucked in on each end. And then I'm going to overlock or zigzag along that raw edge. That's the first thing. I've overlocked the raw edge on the sleeve piece. I've pressed it nice and flat. Now I'm going to line it up approximately 3/4 of an inch again from the outer edge. Now I'm going to pin my binding onto the top just so that the stitch line is just above that zigzag line, just like that. Be careful when you put your pins in, you will have to take them out as you're sewing. Pop one in that end as well, and one in this end. Don't worry if it looks a bit ruffled there, because it will flatten out when I take the pins out. And a pin in this end, and I'm going to stitch along the binding stitch line from end to end so that it secures it nicely. And then when I've done that, we're going to flip it down and hand stitch it down. The stitch line is practically invisible along there because you've just followed it where you had your original line. There's your neatened edge on the back. All you need to do is to flip that over, press it down, and you'll hand stitch along the bottom, making a nice sleeve ready to be hung. And then there is your wall hanging.